kids. I'm so glad you're with us. Today we're looking at Ephesians 5, chapter 18. And in that verse it says, "Do not be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Holy Spirit." Wow. When we look at that verse, we realize a lot of us want to be filled with something, right? Many of us have filled ourselves with hobbies or food or wine. And so what happens is we have filled this hole that we had in our life with something else. But when we give our lives to Christ and we become His and we tell Him, hey, we want to surrender our plans and we want you to be in charge, He fills that hole with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is going to guide us through our lives. Now, the command in this verse says to be filled with the Holy Spirit. So some people go, well, how do I do that? What does that look like? And Pastor Kendall's explaining to us on Sunday that it really looks like yielding. The word he used was yielding. In fact, some of you grabbed a yielding sign out of your bags and held it up when he talked about that. And so I want to look at, what does yielding mean? Yielding means that we're waiting, we're watching, we're anticipating, we're seeing something moving, and we're about to join in and follow along and get involved. Those two things are going to come together while we yield. So we're yielding, and then those two things are going to come together. So let's see. I want you to look at this example of what yielding looks like. Okay, so let's look at this road. You see that there's one main big road, and I'm going to put a car on the road, okay? And this car is going to be moving in a direction down the road. But then you'll see that this other car is coming up kind of like on a ramp, and it's going to join in into the road. But do you see what sign is there? Yeah, it's a yield sign. So what that means is I need to slow down. I need to be watching. I need to be anticipating and waiting my turn. And as that car moves, I'm going to join in traffic with that car. And I'm going to go the same direction as the car. The car is going to be going with me as I go. And that's kind of like the Holy Spirit. When I am being filled with the Holy Spirit, I am excited about what the Holy Spirit's doing. I'm excited about what God is doing and where He's going. And I'm watching and I'm ready to move and I'm getting in the lane where He's at and I'm joining in on what He's doing. And what we find is that the more and more we're joining in with what God's doing, is that we are being filled with the Holy Spirit. We're doing more and more things that honor and glorify Him and are in the direction of where He wants to go. So this is the idea of the commandment of being filled with the Holy Spirit, is joining in on what God is doing and yielding and watching and seeing where He's at work and joining in. Instead of doing an experiment this week, we decided to get the staff to play a game. In the game, you'll see an example of being led by the Holy Spirit. So we have the staff guys and they all have their masks on. And I asked them to pull their masks up and use them like a blindfold. Okay, so now they can't see. And we put a prize, we put a present in the worship center and we hid it underneath one of the seats. And I asked them, with your blindfolds on, I want you to go and find the present. So they are moving around this room. They're running into chairs. They are on the ground trying to feel around. They can't see where they're going. Some aren't moving hardly at all, and then some are just moving fast but bumping into things. They are not able to find the prize. They're not able to find the goal. They're not able to receive the prize because they can't see where they're going. They don't have any direction. This is kind of like in our lives when we try to live life without the Holy Spirit. So then the second part of the game, I said, okay, take your blindfolds and keep them on your eyes, but I'm going to pretend to be the Holy Spirit. And I want you to grab onto the Holy Spirit and I want you to follow the Holy Spirit. Well, what happens is when they all line up and we all get in line with the Holy Spirit knows where we're going. And so when we all line up behind them, then we see this Holy Spirit guiding them through life and ultimately to the goal. It's the same when we are trying to merge or trying to yield into what the Holy Spirit's doing. We want to move our car, our lives, in with what God's doing, and we want to follow. And having a leader and having someone that knows where we're going and has their eyes wide open and are able to see the future, we want to be led by those things, and that is the Holy Spirit. So hopefully those things help you to understand. If you're in a community group this week, we've provided some masks for you to use. We've provided some games as well. So jump into a community group. If not, try this game at home. Maybe get your parents or your siblings to play along, hide a treat and see if they can find it blindfolded, and then pretend to be the Holy Spirit and be their guide and see how much quicker they find it. We know that with the Holy Spirit, things become much clearer.